probe away.
Okay, people, welcome to another episode of this Mike Jack podcast where I kind of discuss or review a game in the form of a free form of a podcast. Makes it easier for me to talk about it. I hate structure. Anyway, okay, I'm going to start talking about how there was a discussion like a few years ago, maybe a decade ago, where Roger Ebert, the late great Roger Ebert, who was a movie reviewer, questions whether video game can be art. And a lot of people have talked about this, I guess, and it's hard for video game to become art because a video game is sometimes in the hands of the player, right? The player can dictate stuff. So whatever that was intended by the creator of the game, it's not necessarily in their hands. It's in the hands of the players, right? But this is ignoring the fact that there's all kinds of games right there. When people say video game can't become art, they're usually not gamers. Like they might game casually one or two genres of gaming. They're ignoring the fact that there are various types of games. There are games where you can, as a player, you control the narrative, you can even create your own art with the game created by someone else, where you can totally create something by yourself, totally independent from the game itself, and the game becomes just a tool, right? Lots of games are like this, especially building games, strategy games even, or maybe it's not even this known as question of it being art or anything. It's just you're just playing a game, right? But there are games where whatever the creator intended for you to feel, or whatever they hope for you to feel, it bears fruit. And mostly it's narrative games where the gameplay is just a side what do you call it? It's just a side thing. And I would argue that the Space for the Unbound falls into this category because I don't care about the gameplay in this game. It's just something that's just in the game, I guess, to be in the game. But overall, it's all about the game. Right? It's all about the story. My bad. The story told and the feelings that you're supposed to feel when you play this game. I think this is one of those games that can be categorized as art because from my observation, I'm looking at Twitter, looking at reviews, I'm looking at people playing the game. We all have sort of like a unified feeling that we share about this game. So isn't that, to me, that's kind of art. Like the creators of this game created something and most people get it. I don't know and most people admire it, and usually for the same reasons. And I think that qualifies a Space for the Unbound as art. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say about that, I guess, because I have a feeling that when I play certain games that this game is art. Like it's like I'm enjoying whatever the developers of the game, I'm enjoying it instead of playing it and creating my own, narrative. This is the developer's work that's shining in this, the story, yada yada yada, the characters, the deeper emotional, what do you call it? I'm not a deep person, so I can't explain this well. Like what kind of deep issues that is underlying in the game. So yeah, that's my first thing I'm going to say about this game, because that's when I first played this game, that's the first thought that came to mind. Okay. Alright, so overall, I'm gonna start with saying what I feel about this game without spoiling anything. Like, I like the game. I don't like the gameplay at all. I hate puzzles. I hate mathematics. There's a lot of counting in this game. There's a lot of counting in this game. Boy, a lot of puzzles, a lot of figuring things out. That's the gameplay. Do not like. I don't usually play games of this type. I just don't. I avoid it, and I would have avoided this game if it wasn't for the settings if you're British. Settings if you're American, I guess. Because it's set in Indonesia in the 90s, which I think is a brilliant setting. As a Malaysian or on a bigger scale, Nusantara resident, Nusantara, for me to explain to you, is kind of like a unspoken. Is it unspoken? It's not official, right? It's kind of like an unspoken unspoken area, probably based on history, where it's like I think it's mostly Southeast Asian region where we share almost the same culture. I can name Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, maybe Thailand, parts of Thailand, parts of Philippines, other Southeast Asian countries, parts of Singapore where we share almost the same culture and stuff, almost the same language. So yeah, so I can relate, number one, and I like it. I like the vibe. Indonesia in the 90s, it's almost the same as Malaysia in the 90s. Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's small differences, but it's almost the same. So I wish there was one day a game set in Malaysia in the 90s. Maybe there is. I'm not aware of it. But yeah, the settings, the settings is UK, right? Settings is if you're from London, maybe. I don't know. Accents and shit. Anyway, the settings is like that. And it's just, I wouldn't play this game if it wasn't set in Indonesia in the 90s. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, so the fact that I enjoyed this game and I felt a lot of things is what drove me to call it art. And yeah, I enjoyed this game, even if I hated the gameplay. How does that make sense? But it happened, right? That happened. Okay, it is what it is. I enjoyed the game. I think it has a really interesting story. It has interesting lessons to be learned. It delves into issues, in a very earnest way, right? Yeah, in a very earnest way, it delves into issues that we face as human beings. A lot of issues, by the way. I'm not going to spoil them yet. And I like the music. I like the art. Definitely love the settings. I love all the references. It helps that the music and the art is really well done. How they created an 8-bit version of Indonesia in the 90s. I thought it was beautiful. The music does help. It's not even 90s style music, but I love it. Like, it's more like this style, right? And also there's anime influences, definitely. I think, I'm not sure. I think like the Japanese studio, right? I don't know, maybe it's a Japanese name, not a Japanese studio, somehow involved. So there's Japanese anime influences, which truly also helps the feel of the game. I would have actually enjoyed it more if it was a movie or a TV series, so I don't have to do mathematics to get through to the next storyline. But it doesn't matter. It's a good experience for me. What else? Yeah, that's what I can say without spoiling. Now we get to the spoilery part. And if you haven't played the game, you don't want to be spoiled, avoid this part at all costs, okay? Now, let's go into details, I guess. Alright, so I made some notes so we can talk about stuff, right? Alright, so there's one thing about the game that I like, which is it involves space diving, okay? Space diving is a concept where the main character, Atma, he can go into people's minds, right? And kind of access their innermost fears, their hopes, whatever. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because when you go into this neighborhood, you're like running into people. You're like, why is this guy an asshole, man? Or what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with this woman? Like, what's wrong? Why is she acting crazy? Why this? Why that? This guy can somehow, the concept of this space dive allows this guy to find the answer, right? So maybe there's something there about who this guy is in the first place. I don't know. They don't explain who this guy is. His name is Atma, that's it, And, this girl called Nirmala. Well, yeah, I didn't even explain what this game is about. You can Google it. Who gives a you can Google it. I don't need to explain what this game. If you want to know what the game is about, just the plot line, whatever, Google it, right? I'm here just to review stuff. So yeah, this guy Atma, who is he? And yeah, he can space dive. So the first thing that the concept that the game teaches you is empathy, I guess. It's like everybody has like a backstory. There's always a reason for someone to be, well, in Southeast Asia, I know this, normally there's always a reason. I don't know about other countries. because colonizer countries, especially Caucasian countries, some of y'all don't need a reason to be assholes. You're just assholes. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'm speaking facts right here. But in Southeast Asia, most of the time there's a reason, maybe, you're like this because you have low self-esteem, because you're bullied by your co-workers, whatever. There's no excuse to being an asshole, but there's a reason most of the time. So this guy can go into, and most of the time he solves their issues and kind of like can change time. He can change time. He can change the scenery. He can change the outlook of the whole town. So it kind of teaches you empathy, because there's always layers behind something, not just, it's kind of like when you're a kid, you're like, well, this guy's an asshole, you label people, right? But there's always a backstory. Everyone has a backstory. That's one of the concepts that the game kind of presents to you. Alright. And then we get to certain things that I like about the game, a nice touch. One of it was, there was a game involving a kid who likes chocolate. And then kind of like you have to find something that will get his mind off the chocolate, right? Because the chocolate is not healthy. Well, chocolates are healthy if it's like dark chocolate, I guess, and no sugar. But this kid is not consuming that kind of chocolate. So in the end, you end up, there's a scale, and you end up reintroducing this kid to his comfort food, which I think is a genius concept. That's one of the, I didn't like the gameplay in this game, like, let's be honest, because it's not my kind of style of gameplay. Some people love puzzles. They really love puzzles. They love solving them. Not me. But this one particular game shines out to me because I just like the concept of, because it's a struggle. It's a Southeast Asian thing where, you have junk food taking over your town, because I grew up in a town, in a medium-sized town, and then you have comfort food. It's kind of like a constant struggle, right? And yeah, so you reintroduce this kid to, number one, it was an homemade Indomie, and that's something we can both relate to, Malaysians and Indonesians, because yeah, the older people in my family like used to cook instant mee, but they added vegetables, they added eggs and stuff, and it becomes like one of the best meals ever made from the just making something out of it, something that's not that great, like instant noodles. So it's kind of like a childhood thing for if you're from Southeast Asia, where they make instant noodles with like other, like it's maybe it's a Southeast Asian thing. You take like a concept, like we like to mix food, right, and create our own creations with it, and that's a childhood thing for me, so I can relate to that. So it becomes a comfort food, right, in our homes. And then the other one is rojak, which is not really a comfort food for Malaysians. More of it's made outside mostly, but in Indonesia, I guess, it's something that's made at home, right? It's a comfort food at home. Maybe our version would be chokodo or like cucok, which is dumplings, I guess, fried dumplings. There's lots of comfort food in Southeast Asia. Come to Southeast Asia, you'll understand, or just watch a YouTube video. To be honest, like food is like different over here. Like it's a whole thing. Like there's all kinds of food, all kinds of mixture of food, like all kinds of mixtures of food. So yeah, so it kind of like it hits home because I can relate to it. Comfort, Southeast Asian comfort food, Indonesian comfort food, Malaysian comfort food, a lot of similarities. So yeah, the battle between comfort food and junk food, and the comfort food just gives you more of a feeling, right? And this kid, when he rediscovers the comfort food, yeah, he stops eating chocolate. Yeah, I don't know, it's a simple game, but it just hit me. Like, I like that. And then I have notes here, so it's gonna be random, right? There's lots of cats. Yeah. If you ever been to Southeast Asia, there's cats everywhere. We love cats. But I get it. There's a lot of cats in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of cats in this game. But cats play a very strong role in this game, and you'll understand why in the end. Because one of the things that this game deals with is depression. It's mentioned. It's not even a spoiler. It's mentioned early in the game, where if you have suicidal thoughts, depression, get help. And I think there's a reason why cats are central to this game. Cats help you, assist you, help you get through the game and give you advice, even fight for you, because cats are good for depression. Like, it's just a fact. If you ever gone through something, you look at a cat, something about them, they do help you. Both indirectly and directly, because a cat's nature is to heal. Yeah, it is. Some cats can detect like small emotional changes in you, and they'll do something about it. Yeah, you might not even realize they're doing something about it. So yeah, so this game is not just cats common in Southeast Asia, and we're gonna introduce a lot of cats in the game. But there's a reason a lot of cats are in the game, because in real life they do play a part in your mental health. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even messing around. It's facts. Like, they do play a part in helping you, whether it's physically or mentally. They do play a part. Ask anyone who's had mental health problems and has had cats, and they'll tell you it helps a lot. Okay, this is a fact. You can't even fight me on this. I'll fight you on this. So that's genius, I think. And then we get to that, like, things that I like, which is night, because I grew up kind of in the 90s. I was a teenager in the 90s. I moved from like a small to medium town to a bigger city. Not that big, like a bigger city. So yeah, I was kind of like into 90s culture as a teenager, as a small kid, to a teenager, turning into a teenager. So I get all the references. Future Fighter, definitely reference to Street Fighter, which is all the rage back then. I didn't even play Street Fighter back then. It was just a thing where everybody knew about it. Like, I was just a kid, I think, when Street Fighter came out. And I would just, when I go to the malls, I would just look at the older kids playing them. So it was like a cultural thing. There's elements like payphones where people gotta put coins in them to make a call. Cyber cafes came later in like the late 90s. At the time I was a bit older, I guess. It's a thing. Cyber cafe, they call it warnet, right? In Indonesia. Yeah, where I'm not sure if this is a regular thing in the US, where most people can afford PCs anyway. But cyber cafes is like a shop where there's like a bunch of PCs, and you can sort of rent one of the PCs. It's yours for about a few hours. Yeah, I used to go. Yeah, when I was in college, I used to go into one of those cyber cafes. My friends would play snooker or like gamble on the horse machine. We'll talk about that maybe one day. But I would go play games. I was more of a geek. And I would go in at 8 p.m. I would go home at like 6 a.m. It's just one whole night in the cyber cafe. Yeah, and then like the most funniest has to be the Black Forest cake. Like I even forgot that thing existed, because we're so far from the 90s, decades ahead of the 90s. Like, I even forgot Black Forest cakes existed. So whoever made this game goes deep into the 90s, like, where things that we don't even remember anymore that has been erased from our minds, like a Black Forest cake. Like it has been erased from my mind, and then this game just reminded me, and I was like, wait, yeah, that was a thing back in the 90s. Yeah, that was a thing. It was a thing. I don't think the cake even exists nowadays. I don't see him. It's not a thing anymore. And another concept is being bullied by Matmoto. We call it Matmoto. Or Rempit is a more new lingo for it. It's bicycle gangs, which actually never happened to me. Like for some reason, like in my neighborhood, like there were a lot of these bicycle gangs, but they were like exemplary. I kind of looked up to them. They didn't bully me. They did bully the bullies. Do you understand? I had bullies in school. Who didn't directly bully me, but they were like bullies generally. You known as. There's bullies in my school. That's what I'm saying. And they get bullied by the biker gangs. I did not get bullied by the biker gangs. In fact, the biker gangs were nice to me for some reason. Like they just bullied bullies. And the biker gangs usually had jobs. You know, they had money. They could rent videotapes, and they would actually. Oh yeah, that's one thing that I'm not. It wasn't in this game, right? Where you could rent videotapes. Maybe it's different in Indonesia. In Malaysia, you had shops where you can rent videotapes in the 90s, and these biker dudes would go in and they would test out videotapes, right? But guess what? They're not renting out normal video films. They're renting out blue films, like yeah, they were renting out blue films, if you understand that. And they were testing it on the spot. So they would make the owner of the shop, can I play this tape? They would test it out right there with the sex scenes. And I was like a kid, I was like probably 11. I was like watching him. I was just like chilling. I would chill in the videotape rental stores because they also had PS1s. PS1s came out in the 90s, right? They had like Micro Geniuses or like Nintendo, fake Nintendos, which we could rent. As kids, we would play those games, and yeah, I would like watch these biker dudes do that. They would come in, I want to rent this blue film, and they would ask the boss to test it out in the shop. So as a kid, I was like, wow, this guy is my hero. Because the guy had money, he had a job. They would usually work in factories, right? And yeah, they would dress a certain way. And those guys used to be my heroes, those biker gangs. Because they had money, they could just test out like a blue film in the shop. And I was like, wow. And that's where I got a chance to watch those kind of films, I guess. And yeah, they were always like protecting me somehow. Because yeah, but they would bully the bullies, like the school bullies. Yeah. Maybe it's a different neighborhood, different rules, I guess. Yeah. Maybe I lived in a better neighborhood. Not really. I live in a good neighborhood, but there were bad neighborhoods next to us. So yeah, so maybe, I don't know. Maybe they just didn't feel like bullying someone weaker. They would just bully someone their own size, I guess. That's just my experience with biker gangs. But biker gangs did have a bad rap in this game. Maybe, but not really, because this game you can space dive. So in the end, you understood some motivations. In fact, in this game there was like a mountain climbing gang. That was funny, where if you met them, they would just give you quiz questions. They look like thugs, but when you walked up to them, they would just ask you quiz questions. They were like, yeah, I thought it was a genius concept too. Because like I said, like people think biker gangs bad, but some gangs are not really bad. They kind of protect you when you were a kid. Like there was one example where they had a mountain climbing gang, which is a funny reference to they probably skip class a lot. That was a funny concept. So that this game is it's not one-dimensional, definitely not. Yeah, all the 90s references, those are the ones that there's also references to like movies, Apa Ada Dengan Cinta is like a famous Indonesian movie back in the 90s. They reference that. There's a lot of other references like shops, the shops and whatever. Small shops, neighborhood shops, stuff like that, right? A lot of 90s elements that just keep like warms my heart as a 90s kid and also 80s kid. Okay. Now what is this that I just wrote? This game makes me hungry. It's true though. I don't know why. Maybe there's a lot of emotional stuff in this game. Whenever I played it on my playthroughs, I always end up saying, oh, this game makes me hungry. Yeah. Even like sometimes I would deliberately play right after a meal. I still got hungry after like half an hour into the game. Maybe it's too emotional. Alright. Another thing about this game is how comprehensive it is when it cuts deep into a lot of issues, right? You would think that it's only going to go into mental health issues. Nah, it cuts deep into like this game is comprehensive. You could have a game, you could play a game, it's about one issue. Another game is about another issue. Another game about another issue. But this game seems to like fit a whole lot of issues into one game and kind of like render it in a fun way for you to play it. Like for example, the kid who has a struggle with junk food and eating proper food, vegetables. That's one issue. There's a ton of those issues. I can't even count them. You had a guy, had like self-esteem issues because his line of work is the line of work that he wants to go into is not, in a society, it's not well regarded. It's a bit too out there. Yeah. You have an older guy who misses his brother. Bro, you had like issues with children, issues with teenagers, issues with adults. You have misunderstandings. You have issues of someone being compared with someone else, missing loved ones, the guilt of making a mistake. You have issues of someone not being honest, there was one issue where this guy has a tiff with this woman, and turns out it's just about him making a mistake, and he wasn't honest about it, and it turns into disdain for some reason, which doesn't make sense, but it happens in real life, right? So this game goes, I don't know, I think this game took years to make, right? And you can see it, because it was like they were like really going deep into people, into human beings, specifically in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, but generally I think a lot of people can relate to as well all over the world, probably go through the same things, right? Yeah, like the emotional layers about issues, human issues, is so comprehensive. Like it might take a study to study like how many things that this game has talked about, like what humans go through, right? It's so comprehensive. Like I know that there are main characters, which I didn't even talk about the main characters. Like I'm just saying, if you want to know anything about this game, just Google it. I'm just gonna review it. But the main characters do delve into their issue, but there are people in the town where, because this guy Atma, the main character, can space dive, and this girl, there's a few characters here, Raya, Lulu, Nirmala, Marin, they all live in this town. So this guy goes around town, he runs into people, space dives into them, and yeah. So I think now that I'm talking about this, I kind of get what Atma is actually. Yeah, I kind of get a bit of what the main character is. I don't know, but maybe he is just a person, they never explain who the main character is. I don't think they did. But yeah, so it's so comprehensive. But the main characters do have their own issues, but with one another, it's different issues. You get me? Like, well, we're in spoiler discussion, right? Raya might have a different issue with Lulu. Raya and Nirmala is a whole issue. Raya and Marin has a different issue. Raya by herself has her own problems. And yeah, I like that. I mean, it's a lot to take, but because it's a game, somehow it takes some time to take. So yeah, so they kind of peel the emotional layers, right? Even like Eric is the bully, right? Supposed to be bully. Yeah, you get into his mind. And then he has issues also with his father. Yo, it's deep. The Ria Cafe issue, where it's about between chasing dreams and obligation to your family, and they somehow how they in the end solve that. Wow, it deals with a lot. I would argue too much, but I don't think it's too much. Maybe someone has to do it. This game did it. Yeah, right. This game did it. Yeah, there's a lot. It talks about trauma, PTSD, longing, failure in life. Yo, talked about a lot. And also, okay. What else am I right here? Oh yeah, there was one thing I thought was interesting. There was one part where Atma is trying to help Raya deal with her depression, with her issues, trauma, and the gameplay is that you kept waiting. If you're like the gameplay is you do something, she's like doesn't accept it, and then you wait in a chair. So that's and then it keeps repeating, right? Which kind of that's so real. Like that's what it is when you deal with that stuff. Sometimes it's about patience. It's about persistence. It's not about, we're in a movie where you just deal with it and it's done, right? Sometimes it's a cycle, It's sort of like a cycle. You have to be patient. You have to keep repeating the same things, the same true things that you should say. And it's about having patience. Like, whoa. Yeah, I think whoever made this game is a group of people, right? They delve deep into this whole mental health stuff. Like it's real. Like, or maybe one of them is a psychiatrist. I don't know. Maybe they just know a lot about this, right? Like it's things that on the surface, people won't. I guess won't notice, I guess. Well, yeah, it's small things that you're like, wow, that's a detail right there. And it's probably a lot of things that I missed because I was annoyed by the mini games, which, by the way, I found really annoying. But that's just me. It's not the fault of the game. I think most people like puzzle games anyway. It's just me that I'm just so yeah, my brain is not built for that, and my emotions are not built for puzzles. Cutting people out, and also the part about where how to deal with abuse, where sometimes you can't change someone. You just have to cut them out. That's it. That's the solution. Whoa, that's real. Because in usually in a Hollywood, I mean, I'm not trying to generalize Hollywood, but usually in a movie, there's always a solution, right? Someone can change. There's always a closure. Not really. Sometimes it's if that person that sometimes people just can't change. You just have to cut them off. Set the limit, especially an abusive person, and just stay away from them. It is what it is. They can't change. You can't change them. Why would you want to change them when you have a whole life to live, right? Fuck it. Fuck off. Yeah. That's it. Some people don't change. It is what it is. I don't give a fuck. I have you have your life to give, right? Why should you give a fuck? Yeah. That concept is in this game. I'm like, wow. This game goes really deep and really real, right? Yeah. There's a note I put here. Disappointed that Atma is not a kitten because at one point one of the cats called Atma kitten. Be a good kitten and grab that food kibbles for us. And I thought that there was going to be the plot twist that Atma is actually a kitten, because cats do help with depression and stuff and mental health issues. They do help. Even physical issues, they can help. So I thought that was going to be the twist. Maybe it is a twist, but because they never explain who Atma is clearly, maybe he is a kitten, right? And he drowned, and that haunted Raya or Nirmala. Also, the concept of Nirmala and Raya itself is a whole thing to discuss. That's a whole podcast. I'm not even going to discuss that because I don't have the knowledge. Yeah, I don't have the knowledge to discuss that, about how people create different characters in their mind. Yeah, that's a whole thing that, yeah, I just know from the surface about some stuff that I run into, either through watching videos or, just experiencing stuff and looking at people, just observing people. But that's a bit too, that involves looking into people's minds, which I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not an expert in that. So that's a whole thing that people can talk about. Like Nirmala and Raya, even Atma, what is Atma? Stuff like that. Yeah. And let's talk about, what else can I talk about this game before I end this podcast? I thought like I thought that towards the end, if I had a criticism of this game, towards the end they had like puzzle door puzzles, math puzzles, which I thought was annoying, because in the end you just want the story. You've gone on a long journey, you just want the story to end, right? And you just want it to go beautifully, gracefully. If you're like good at puzzles, it probably did go well for you. Like it went smooth, probably. Shout out to Zane Gaming. I had to go I think 3 or 4 times I had to refer to the walkthrough just to get through the puzzles, because I was emotionally invested. I didn't want to spoil the momentum, but that's just my opinion. Don't take it seriously. I hate this genre of game in the first place. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I won't be able to appreciate the art. That's why I call it art, because I would have hated the gameplay. I know I was going to hate the gameplay before I even bought the game. I bought it anyway. So that's how I know this is art, because the gameplay doesn't even the gameplay doesn't even matter. Like after I'm done with the game, all I remember is the feeling the game gave me. Immediately I said 10 out of 10, because if you watch my playthrough, I was annoyed. Like for like 1 hour I was annoyed at the puzzles, the mathematics that I had to do, which I didn't do anyway because I ended up referring to the walkthrough. In the end I just said 10 out of 10. And yeah, it got emotional towards the end. Like especially that part when they were on the roof. Raya and Atma were talking on the roof. Like they weren't even talking some deep stuff, I think. And they were just, most of the time they were just talking. Sometimes it's remembering old stuff, just talking about stuff. on the roof, that got me. I think that was one of the best part of the game when Raya and Atma talking on the roof. Yeah, because some people don't even want to go deep into stuff. They just want to talk. They just want to be remembered that there is a life here worth living, right? And it could be talking about simple stuff, about food, about, places. Yeah, because if you want to go deep, you go see a psychiatrist, see a professional. You should, actually. Yeah, you should see a professional. They can help you. Some of them can, most of them. But yeah, as human beings, sometimes we just want to be reminded that there is a life here worth living, right? That's the part on the roof. I thought that was beautiful. Yeah, I need to see this in movie. I need to see a Space for the Unbound, the movie, or like a series done well as this game is possible. Oh yeah, and I thought that monster snails were cool. I think Marin turns into a monster snail. Every character can turn into like a big animal character, which somehow represents them. I thought, yeah, monster cats were cool. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say for now. That's all I have to say, I think, about this game. Ultimately, despite being annoyed by the gameplay, which is something I predicted anyway, immediately I gave it a 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10 because of the way it makes me feel. And even while I was playing, I was talking about when I watch a movie, I don't care if a camera is in the shot or if like in the movie, like there's like, let's say the movie is set in the 90s and there's like a smartphone somewhere in the scene. Like I don't care if they make, if it's not perfect. If at the end of the movie, what I felt is perfect, is a 10 out of 10. I don't care about nothing else. I don't care if the movie was shot with an iPhone. Actually, iPhones take good videos. I need a better, like an Android, like a Xiaomi. I don't care if the film is shot with a Xiaomi, I don't care. In the end, if at the end of the movie I like it, it's a 10 out of 10. That's how I roll. That's how it is what it is. That's how the game is a game. And that's how it is with this game. Like the genre is all wrong for me. Like I hate puzzles. I hate mini games, adventures. There's a lot of fun mini games. They're supposed to be fun in this game. I didn't play none of them. I did play Future Fighter, got annoyed, got out of it, did not play it again. Yeah, it's not my kind of genre of game. Like, so in a way, this game is not supposed to be perfect for me, and yet it is, because at the end of the game, I felt something, and it's very strong feeling. And in the end, I enjoyed it all. I enjoyed it ultimately. So I gave this game 10 out of 10 immediately after finishing it. So that's what I feel about the game. Okay. And that's all I have to say about the game. Thanks for making this game, to all the creators involved in making this game, right? All of y'all, big up, right? Thanks for listening. Peace.